Hi everyone, that's Black here, and welcome back to my game corner. Hope you're doing fine, because I certainly am. The Metroidvania marathon continues, and as promised, today I will be talking about my favorite Metroidvania. Actually, about two to be completely honest. This is due to the fact that this game has two parts, and since I don't want to separate them, I will try to quickly talk about both. Naturally, don't forget about the episodes, you can switch between them if you are more interested in a particular sequence. Ori came into my life when I was about 10 to 11 years old, and it's actually one of the first games I ever played consciously. I was actually really into horror back then and hardly watched platformers or any other genres, so Ori was the first game that introduced me to the Metroidvania genre. I'll be completely honest, I don't remember exactly how I found about Ori. I just downloaded it to my computer one day and played it while I was at my grandma's. I didn't actually finish the game, I just got to the end of the Kinzone tree and completed the first full-fledged elemental boss fight. Then I just stopped. I actually think I got lost back then, but I didn't finish the game later. It was about 2 years later though. Wow. And since then, surprisingly, I haven't replayed the first Ori in its entirety. Until recently, of course, because I needed to refresh my memory for this review, and oh, I have a lot to say. I was already looking forward to the second part with great impatience, and completed it 3 times in a row. I completed almost all the achievements in the game, but unfortunately, I was a little short on the speed and no death achievements. Especially since for some reason, one life mod was removed from the second part, but more on that later. In general, I have some experience with this game. I may not be very knowledgeable about these Metroidvanias of yours, but I can tell you a lot. Let's start with Ori and the Blind Forest. The game was released on April 27th, 2016. It was developed by Moon Studios and published by Xbox Game Studios. Now you can only buy the definitive edition on Steam. The standard version is no longer sold for reasons unknown to me, although it does have a page. In any case, the game begins with a short but terribly dramatic introduction. This tutorial of sorts, by the way, can be skipped, which is very convenient. Here we play as the adoptive mother of our main character, and in these couple of minutes I became so attached to her that her sudden supposed death brought me into a state of such severe sadness. The first time I didn't fully understand what happened, but it was terribly sad. So, we play as the spirit of the forest named Ori. The plot is that a huge spirit tree was damaged by an evil owl named Kuro, who stole Sane. And probably because of this, the whole of Nibel, the place where we will be playing, is mired in some kind of infection. Nibel can be only restored by restoring the stolen elements: water, air, and warmth. Each of the elements is located in different parts of the map, but more on that later. After the tutorial section, we get to the map and can now explore everything what comes under our paws. Let's start with the most noticeable. Ori is incredibly fast and flexible. Each step feels like a feather. I don't know how to describe it, I guess you can only feel it, but if you pay attention to the jumps, you'll understand what I mean. It is important to note that Ori is still mostly a platformer. Unlike Hollow Knight, for example, there are no bosses in the usual sense. And in the second part, they will also partly differ from the standard way to make a boss. But first things first. The first steps in the game are pretty clear. We get acquainted with the spirit named Sane, that will now accompany us and will also be our weapon against unfriendly flora and fauna. We also learn all sorts of little things about keystones, wells, and all that stuff, and most importantly about the soul link and the skill tree. Yes, there is character leveling. How do you like that? Of course, this tree is not ideal and looks pretty simple, but I really liked it. It seems like a great idea for a game like this. As I said, Sane directed us towards the spirit tree, and that's where we'll go. Of course, the first platforming part awaits us on the way, and get used to it. The entire game is built on platforming and the emphasis is on it. In fact, the first sections are not that difficult, but as you gain abilities, there will be more and more complications and interesting things. The Spirit Tree and Sane will tell us a piece of plot and send us to restore the elements. And here I want to note one detail that really ruins the Metroidvania system. Usually, as we know, Metroidvania gives us a large world that is explored as the player gains new abilities. In fact, it doesn't matter whether there is a central story in the game or not. The player can go wherever they want and do whatever they want. Usually, there is no strong specificity. Let me give you an example. Hollow Knight has plot characters, dreamers, who need to be killed to further advance the plot. The point is that there are 3 of them, but you don't have to kill them in any order. That is, you can start with any. Here, the game literally pokes you where you need to, because in other places you simply won't be able to get through due to the leveling up or lack of abilities. Therefore, you kind of have to go first to the Ginzo Tree, then to the Forlorn Ruins, and so on. Where you poked, that's where you have to go. In theory, of course, after completing a certain zone, you can continue exploring it, but this will lead to you needing more abilities, which makes it more profitable to explore the world after completing the game. Which is weird, this basically shouldn't happen. That probably is why I didn't even explore half of the game when I played it. Anyway, let's continue the journey as it is for now. As we continue on, we have to get our first destination, the Ginzo Tree. This is necessary to restore the element of water and clean the waters of Nibble from contamination. Getting to the tree is one thing, but getting the element of water back is another. Once there, it turns out that a spider-like creature called Gumo borrowed... Okay, fine, Brainsley stole the sphere of water and ran into the sunset. Naturally, now we have to go through a lot of platforming sections before we get to Gumo and the sphere. Almost everything here is built on double jumps and wall climbing. Somewhere you will need to destroy fragile walls, somewhere just climb up, somewhere collect keystones and open doors. In general, nothing at all unusual, overall standard platforming. But by the way, very pleasant and interesting. Jumping back and forth is a lot of fun, especially with Ori's dynamism. To be honest, I can't really say anything special about the platforming or most of the game in general. Yes, there are a lot of rooms with cool little challenges, and from time to time there are even small arenas where you have to fight stronger or special opponents. By the way, imagine how a brilliant genius, me, tried to kill this worm with regular blows as a child, and not with a light burst as it should have been. Well, I am still a bit stupid in some places, but what can you do? Back then, such things didn't really get through me. Now, years later and many new experiences later, the game has become even easier for me, and I'm even surprised how I completed the Ginzo Tree in literally about an hour, although as a child it took me, well, 3 or even 4 hours. And I'm not even kidding, for some reason platforming seemed prohibitively difficult for me back then. Anyway, after a while, having finally received the water sphere, we stomped to the tree to return it to its place. The problem is that the tree is rotten from the inside and is now infected. Our task, of course, is to heal it. In the meantime, we will be given my favorite ability, to bash off projectiles, redirecting them. I love this thing, makes Ori almost invulnerable if used correctly. So, getting a new ability usually means a small test so that the player learns how to use it correctly. And it just so happened that Ori gets this feature in the Ginzo Tree, which is something like a boss. But wait a minute, we'll get to the explanation of this statement a bit later. Before that, I want to note this puzzle with bullets. In fact, I have no idea how I managed to do it right away. It's good that it's only on one side, otherwise it would be the end of me. I don't know, to be honest, despite the fact that this is just a small platforming that requires more concentration and reaction, for some reason this part seemed especially tense to me. In general, I don't really like such things, when you need to not just jump across a room, but also really watch the projectile so that it doesn't hit a wrong wall. Now that the water sphere is restored, it's time to get out of the street before the water washes us away. It's time to introduce you to the local bosses. These are the elements. Basically, Ori needs to run away from somewhere before he gets killed by some element. In this case, we need to climb up the trunk of the Ginzo tree as quickly as possible, while the wave is chasing us. Basically, this is the same platforming challenge, but with a story and cool music. And it looks cool too. I could have actually completed this on my first try, but I wasn't smart enough to jump on a wall, so I only completed this segment on the 4th try. Basically, this entire section is dedicated to bouncing off projectiles, and occasionally you can also climb up the walls, but mostly we just parry the projectiles and climb up. By the way, I would also like to note that water, like any other element, has an adaptive speed. That is, if you slow down for some reason, then the element will also slow down a little. This is very convenient, in fact. I really like this approach. When I was younger, I couldn't get through the tree for a very long time, and I can't even understand why. It felt somehow longer, to be honest. Now, it's as if it's very small and simple. But that's not bad, I'll explain why later. The general joy over the cleaning of the waters is interrupted by the return of Kuro. She nearly kills Ori, who is saved by Gumo, and now we're allowed to swim. More precisely, we will definitely have to swim in order to pick up 2 keystones and move on. This time, our path lies in the dark, mystical woods, a creepy and unusual place with a special feature. We need to go there to get the key to the Forlorn Ruins, where we later need to restore the element of wind. In fact, the mystical woods are essentially one of my favorite locations due to how unusual it is. Firstly, the forest will change as you go deeper, and it blows your mind. In fact, I believe that when the forest changes, it is no longer possible to get out of it directly. That is, you are locked inside the location. At least I can't imagine how you can return back from a place that constantly changes its environment. This is important to remember, because I will bring this up again closer to the moment with criticism. Approaching the mystical woods, we will see Kuro, who, as usual, is blocking the way for us. Well, to be more precise, she's simply guarding the entrance. And since Ori is not yet able to find an owl 10 times bigger than himself, all we can do is drop a stone on Kuro and scare her off. At the same time apparently almost killing her. I don't know what was in the minds of those who came up with the idea of dropping a stack of stones on the bird's head, but maybe Kuro is just a very magical creature and she doesn't care. But overall, okay. We successfully push the stones down, and in return we get not only an open path, but also a feather that will allow us to hover in the air. Overall, a very convenient ability. It can be used in many places. A really cool thing. Now we can fully immerse ourselves in the dark forest. Here we will be also given a new ability: stick to walls. Yes, stick to damn walls. For those who have only completed the second part of Ori, this sounds like a joke, but no, it really is that. Hold tight. In fact, we will need this ability to combine with another ability that we will receive later. The joke is that until that moment we will not particularly need this sticking to the walls. By the way, without jokes, I really don't like the fact that sticking to the walls is generally considered an ability. Like, why? I can already climb walls, why should I stick to them? It very rarely becomes really useful in normal situation, but here in the mystical woods, of course, it will be needed. And in fact, the way it is presented specifically in this place is very cool. I like the trick with the mushrooms that disappear when you jump. You have to think through your actions a little and not constantly hold the jump button. Which, by the way, I really like to do, because I like the way Ori jumps. With a new ability, we crawl to a special sphere, which we need to take to the altar, which was at the beginning of the forest. Here we will be taught that sometimes when Ori carries something on his shoulders, he won't be able to move as quickly. Considering the projectiles flying at the character, it is a real treat. And the enemy is in the halfway, so sometimes you have to put the ball on the ground. In fact, it seems to me that this is a bit of a frame-perfect situation, and in fact, it is a very common feature in this part. After activating the altar, we're given the key to the Forlorn Ruins, the Gumo Seal, which means it's time to run and save the winds. Surprisingly, this time Kuro doesn't even try to get us, although maybe she's cleaning her feathers from the dust on the rocks, who knows? Anyway, Forlorn Ruins. This is the most horrible, disgusting, stupid location I've ever seen. Ugh! This is just... I can't even express this thought normally. I remember how at 13 years I had only one question. What the hell is going on? Anyway, let me explain. The idea of the ruins is that you have to carry a ball on your shoulders all the time, which is kind of heavy and deprives you from half of your abilities. You can't bash off projectiles, you can't double jump, basically nothing except walking, jumping, and hitting opponents. And now add this to the change in gravity and the camera, which sometimes doesn't show where you're jumping at all. Oh, and did I tell you about the inverted controls when you're upside down? Can you imagine my feelings? And one thing is that now I know how everything works here, and it causes me fewer problems, but then my 13-year-old brain just exploded. I'm not kidding, I sat there and just didn't understand how. In fact, the ruins are not as huge as they may seem, especially now after many years. But I won't say that they were so problem-free. The last air element boss fight in general is, well, so-so. It's not as cool as with water, I think, but in reality it's not that easy too. The boss fight itself seems difficult to me even now with my experience, but in reality, as always, everything here depends on the speed of thought. Sometimes you can also get out of a difficult situation here, by the way. In fact, surprisingly, it's better not to rush here. It's most convenient to slow down and spend a little time waiting out the flow, especially in the first corridor. In general, it's better not to panic everywhere here, because naturally no one is chasing the player as far as I noticed. Rather, it's more of a complicated, slightly longer platforming without saving and with tense music. At the end of the boss fight, we arrive at the plot location, Kuro's nest. Here we learn the real reason why Kuro attacked and stole the spirit. It turns out that Kuro is a mother. Moreover, when the spirit tree was searching for Ori in the time of the light ceremony, its strong light by accident killed 3 little owls, Kuro's children. The only one egg remained, which Kuro decided to protect. How did it happen that the light destroyed the living beings? I don't even know, to be honest. It seems that the light should maintain harmony and all that, but maybe Kuro is just a creature of darkness like her children, and their kind is not able to live normally under such conditions. In general, I don't know, it's all just sad. This is a moment to cry, ladies and gentlemen. No, well, it really becomes sad from the realization that 3 cute owls basically died. However, we won't be allowed to be sad for long. Mommy has returned to her nest and she clearly is not very happy to see us here, especially next to the egg. So we run down through the quote-unquote emergency exit and see, drumroll, a stealth mission. Yes, there is a stealth section and it is pretty cool actually. I really like how it is arranged, but it seems to me that the first part is somehow... well, I don't know if it's how the game wanted me to go through this, but I didn't see any other options. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it was possible to get underwater, probably it was possible to break the ice at the very beginning and swim underwater, but I didn't have enough brains to do it. In general, take note of this moment. Naturally, we escape and then our path lies in Sorrow Pass, where we will need to take the Sunstone, which will open the passage to the Mount Horo. Remember what I said about Forlorn Ruins? Forget it. Compared to this, they will seem like child's play. This is the most terrible, disgusting, and difficult location in general. I don't know how to describe all my suffering during this piece of God knows what. I hated this place with all my heart. I have never gone through anything more difficult in for so long I can't even say how long. It's terrible. I don't even really want to talk about it. The main thing is that I took the Sunstone and can finally... Oh yeah, I got stuck here because the ability to super jump and super jump from the walls turns out could be directed, but I probably didn't finish reading the tutorial, yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, here they will give us the variability for which we will need to stick to walls. A super jump. There is nothing special about it, you just jump higher, that's all. Now our final goal is Mount Horror, a gloomy, fiery mountain, a warmth element overflowing with lava and hard platforming. Honestly, the biggest problem in the mountain is getting to the top because that's where the first section we need to pass will be. And yes, Mount Horror essentially consists of several sections that need to pass one after another. They're small, so overall, well, in generally I had no problems with them. Except maybe... But there is nothing special about it. Overall, I even enjoyed it. It was fun and it was a great relaxing stage of the game, especially after what happened before. So, here we are. The final stretch, the final boss, the final push. God, I don't really even know what to say about this. Restoring warmth in the mountain is cool, of course, but escaping from an angry Kuro through the elements is just something else entirely. And this is taking into account the fact that there will be pieces with the previous elements, like wind and little water, and the most important thing is that Kuro will also gain rage, like in that stage with the stealth segment. Wow. In general, it's hard for me to say anything here, except that I also had problem with stones falling from the ceiling in the air sequence, as well as in the boss fight with air. However, after this boss fight, everything ends for Ori, well, not so well. Still, Kuro really doesn't want him to leave to save Nibel because the fate of her child depends on it. Enslaved by revenge, she sees Naru, our mother who traveled a long way with Gumu to see her son, and then, well, that's it. Remembering her children and realizing that because of her desires Naru could lose her only child, Kuro makes the final decision and restores the light of the spirit tree, which is why she dies. However, that's not all. Her death leads to something good. Nibel now blooms, and the last remaining egg that belonged to Kuro is now being raised by the family of Ori, Naru, and Gumu. The egg hatches, marking the second part. That's it. Yeah, that's the whole game. Whew, what an adventure. Wow, that was a lot of fun. Let's go then. Huh? What? There's more? Okay, let me check. Oh yeah, right. There's another piece indeed. But we've never been sent there and it's pretty dark. Well, let's try. Hey, Black from the script editing here. Before starting this fragment, I want to say that this location is only in the definitive edition of the game and was not in the original. This means that perhaps you could have a different gaming experience, but don't rush to yell at me. Now the player can only buy the definitive edition and I myself have been playing it since childhood. But the funniest thing is that I have never visited this location, so well, understand and forgive me. Let's continue. And damn, how did I burn from this place? Okay, let's start with the fact that yes, you can get there with only double jump and the ability to climb walls, for example. Even in general, the ability to climb walls alone is generally enough to get to the place where they give us, right now attention, a dash! They placed a dash in here! And don't get me wrong, but what do you think? Would you go there in complete darkness to explore something there? And you know what the coolest thing is? It's impossible to get through this entire territory without a bunch of abilities that you'll get later in the game! I can't! How? Just how? Someone will say, well, Alex, this is a Metroidvania. That's the whole point, to look for everything yourself, especially since you can get the dash without a bunch of abilities. If everything were so simple! Firstly, it's dark there, and the thought appears in your head that maybe later in the game they'll give you the ability to glow or something like that. Secondly, you quickly forget that this location exists in general because you're constantly being dragged around different places, and just in the different way and in the different direction. So, anyway, I tried to play in this location, to go through it and so on, but I was in such a terrible state of exhaustion that I just couldn't finish it. It's more like what the fuck? I have no words. I was so shocked and upset. Dash, one of the most important abilities, which is needed everywhere, is hidden in a place where you're unlikely to go at all. And the developers apparently understand this, otherwise the game would not be possible to complete anymore. Bruh. If you want to support me with more than just liking and subscribing, consider checking out the link in the description. There you can donate any sum of money starting from $1. Any donation is appreciated. Thank you in advance. So, we're finally in the mid-results section of this video. In this section, I will tell you about the pros and cons of the first part. Let's start with pros. Visuals. Perhaps the most important feature of Ori is the visual component of the game. I have never seen such a beautiful artistic style immersing you in the real fairy tale, and to be honest, I really like it. Everything is worked out to the smallest detail, every leaf, every drop. This is a very beautiful story that makes you plunge headlong into an adventure in the forest of Nibel. This is truly perhaps the best part of the game. Music. Ori has very magical music that complements the atmosphere of the game. I really like that each chase uses essentially the main theme of the game, but changes it in some places. It's very cool. Platforming. Yes, it's very cool, fun, quite challenging even for an experienced player, but at the same time, it will captivate even the guys who are playing for the first time. I think that I could recommend this game even to the younger guys, because in general, it is not as difficult as it may sometimes seem. In general, the game is very entertaining, and if you have already started, then most likely you will play until the very end. Plot. Despite its simplicity, the plot is extremely cute and addictive. Yes, it's a bit silly in places, but let's be honest, it's literally the best for the overall atmosphere of the game. I think that's exactly how a plot for such game should look. Now, I understand that many people would probably like more secrets, some mysteries, and puzzles, but I think that Ori is not quite the game for this. Although there are secrets in some way. For example, that location about Naro, yes, it still burns me down. Emotions. One of the Ori's main selling points, the emotions that the game evokes. Despite the silly and primitive plot, it is quite dramatic and, in the moment, really touches the soul. Although we're not even talking about the plot and cutscenes, but about the game as a whole. Any piece of the game brings some emotion. The plot moments are mostly rather dramatic and make a lump in the throat appear, but in addition to them, there are also some tense moments of chases, and they keep you in panic state until the very end, even if you go through them 10 times. No, of course, perception varies from person to person, but personally I had it, and in fact, judging by the discussion in the community on Steam, many people have the same, which is an excellent indicator. So, we smoothly move on to the cons. Firstly, let me give you a brief explanation of what a Metroidvania is and what I consider to be the standard of this genre. Metroidvania is a complex genre of video games that typically combines platforming and exploration of locations using various abilities that you receive as you progress. Those abilities are required to complete the entire game and/or to simplify some parts of the game. Sometimes it happens that an ability might not be required, but thanks to it, the game will be easier to complete. In essence, a Metroidvania should have a large map that you, as a player, have to explore. Metroidvania should give freedom of action and encourage exploration, while also gently guiding the player along the main storyline, or at least having one. We figured out the concept, now we can deal with the cons. This is not a Metroidvania. This is a platformer. Ori is not a Metroidvania at all. This is a platformer that tries to be a Metroidvania. The problem with Ori is that it is so sequence-driven. It is impossible to explore something when you're simply blocked from it. On one hand, you might say, but Alex, there are areas in the game where you can safely go after you get an ability, and after you open elements, there is more space to explore. To which I would say, it should not be like that. Let's use Hollow Knight as an example. Only because I don't want to spoil the second part yet, but just know they fixed it there. The game has a main storyline that you need to go through, but essentially no one directs you. You are not directly told, like, hey, you need to go there, you definitely need to go here first and then there. No, there is no such thing. You explore on your own. Here, Sane not only directly tells us where to go, but also does not allow us to go anywhere else. Why? It's simple. The locations are simply impossibly difficult. I say this from experience, because when I was 11, I thought of going towards Mount Horror right after Ginzo Tree, and if you think that I fucking walked to the entrance to the mountain, then no, I didn't. It was too difficult, and for a long time, I did not understand why it was so hard. The answer is simple, because you're not supposed to go there. The game thinks that you should go strictly from one point to another, and this is where the second con comes from. A dash in the end of the game? Yes, I put a question mark, because I think you can get dash earlier, essentially. The problem is that, let's be honest, who wouldn't run to test the dash into the depths of this place? And it's really easy to get locked in here. Of course, I'm not sure that you won't get out, but I understand that the developers themselves intended that this entire area should be completed after the entire game. And like, seriously? A dash? They placed one of the most important abilities in a game like this here. An ability that is used everywhere possible. This is a really big problem, and it killed my desire to play further, honestly. And I guess that's all I wanted to say. Yes, I don't have many cons, but they are quite global and destroy the main concept of the game. For me personally, this is a problem, and I think that this should not happen. This is probably the reason why I did not 100% the game. Overall, my opinion about Ori and the Blind Forest is this. It's a wonderfully beautiful game about which I have something to say. It's the game of my childhood, and the game that I still love despite some cons that has become more noticeable to me with the experience. I still think that this game gives a wonderful experience. Perhaps it's not the best game in the genre, perhaps it has its drawbacks, but oh how good it is. Of course, I recommend it to every fan of the platformers.